T-CLOCS is stupid. I mean, when was the last time you actually went over your entire motorcycle before you went on a ride?
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Here's a pre-ride checklist that you can do in under 2 minutes, and in fact, you can do it while you're getting your gear on. T-CLOCS is one of a bunch of acronyms that you learned in the MSF course and then promptly forgot, probably. Or maybe you're about to learn it in the MSF if you're getting started. It's their pre-ride checklist, and they want you to do it every single time you go for a ride. It stands for tires, controls, lights and electronics, oil and other fluids, chassis, and stands. Each entry has between 2 and 8 items that you need to look over, and to do it properly, it would probably take you longer than your entire ride would. Now, it's important to mention here, I'm not dogging on the MSF at all. The Motorcycle Safety Foundation has a big job. They need to take people who have never ridden a motorcycle before in their entire life and get them comfortable enough with a bike in 2 days in the classroom and 2 days on the range to go ride a bike on the street. When I got my driver's license as a teenager, it took several months and like 100 hours of supervised driving to be allowed to drive on my own, and with a motorcycle, it's done in about the time it takes to watch the entire Lord of the Rings extended cut trilogy. That means that there are some things that they teach you that, while technically accurate, aren't practical or aren't really proper riding techniques, and I wanted to go over some of those with you guys, and the first one I wanted to cover is T-CLOCS. Now, unlike T-CLOCS, which requires you to entirely vivisect your motorcycle, I only have one thing on my pre-ride checklist: tires. The sub-entry, check pressures. The only thing I really care about before hitting the road is making sure that these tires here are at the proper pressure so that the bike can handle as best as possible. And that pressure is going to vary from bike to bike. For my Sportster, I tend to run a lot higher pressures, typically something like 38 in the front and 40 in the rear, but if I'm on a sport bike or a naked bike, it's typically 34, 34, or 36, 34. And for those of you wondering where I've pulled those numbers from, my explanation's pretty simple. Like I said, I typically do this while I'm gearing up. I'll roll the bike out into the driveway to let it idle, and I'll check the pressures while it's warming up. If the tires need to be aired up, I'll let the pump run while I'm getting my helmet and gloves on. Usually they're right on the money, because a tire that doesn't have a nail in it will usually only lose a little bit of air at a time. So over a week, it might only be a few tenths of a PSI off. If you're noticing big drops week to week, you may have a bigger problem. After that, I'm out of here. I do this whether it's my butt in the seat or it's yours, because most of my bikes are actually available for rent right now on RiderShare. RiderShare is the biggest online rental service with thousands of bikes across the US available for you to check out right now. If you're traveling and want to get on 2 wheels, or you're looking to buy a new bike and are sick of that dumb little loop that a dealer takes you on, or maybe you just want to try something different, RiderShare is the perfect way to do it. Or maybe you're like me and you have a few thousand pounds of freeloading motorcycles in your garage and it's time for them to start earning their keep. You can list your bikes up for rent and start earning money off of them. During the MotoGP weekend here in Austin, I made over $700 in just 4 days. Click that link down in the description below and you'll get $25 off your first rental. Why don't I do the rest of the checks before I go for a ride? Because the likelihood of the oil, for example, dropping to an unsafe level without me knowing between rides is vanishingly small. I mean, I know Harleys are supposed to leak a lot, but looks good to me. The reality is most bikes are gonna be totally fine to sit for a couple of days or even a couple of weeks between rides. They're not gonna just wilt away, starved by lack of attention, unless it's an Italian motorcycle, and then I feel your pain. But what I do what I do is a thorough post-ride check. After every ride, I pull into the garage, take my gear off, get a cool drink or whatever for a few minutes, and then I come back out to the garage to check the oil. Almost every owner's manual indicates that the oil needs to be checked hot, but what most say is to let the bike idle for a few minutes, then sit on the side stand to cool off. That is not enough time to get a proper oil reading from your motorcycle. You need to get the whole motor up to temperature and run it for a decent amount of time before you can get an accurate reading, especially on a dry sump bike like my Tuono. In fact, this bike right here requires you to check the oil while the bike is straight up and down and running. If your bike's geometry has been changed, like this Sportster right here, it's important that you make sure you're measuring the oil at the proper angle. For me, that means taking this very scientific wood block and putting it under the kickstand before I measure my oil. The last thing I do is I check the final drive to make sure that it's okay, and if everything looks good, I'm done. If not, it's time to bust out the wrenches. This is also a great time to look for leaks because the fluids will still be hot and drippy. Also, if you've got a hot motor, chances are you'll smell an oil or a coolant leak if you've got one. So why don't I do the rest of the T-CLOCS check? I mean, they do tell you to check to make sure that your rims are true, or that you need to check and make sure you have life in your brake pads, or heck, they even want you to go over every single bolt and fastener on your frame to make sure that it's all still held together. Well, like I said, nothing is gonna magically change on your motorcycle from one day to the next. If your brakes worked on Sunday, they're gonna keep working on Monday. And if something happens, you're gonna see a giant puddle of brake fluid underneath your motorcycle when you come back out to ride it. If your bike is sitting on the side stand right now, I promise you, it's not just gonna collapse like a three-legged IKEA table in an earthquake. There is a time and a place for a full inspection on your motorcycle, and that's every 600 miles when you check and lube your chain or your belt. You do lube your chain every 600 miles, right? Anyway, here's my 600-mile checklist. First up, bolts. Do I see any empty bolt holes? You might as well check your axle nuts while you're here too. Second, underside. It always pays to look under your bike. Older bikes may have weep holes for the water pump, or you might get a leaky gasket somewhere and you'll notice some extra grime building up on the motor. If everything looks good, give it a clean. Remember, clean engines run cooler. Third, throttle. Do I have proper free play? Usually it will only get looser, but sometimes a cable might jump out of its housing and cause you to lose free play. Last up, tech. Do my lights work? Do my switches work? Does my dashboard work? Usually you'll notice a problem long before you get here, but it's always worth checking. That's right, when you service your motorcycle, remember my butt. My butt has never steered me wrong, and I have a feeling that you're gonna enjoy my butt system. This is not a substitute for a full service, however. You are still gonna have to do your valves every now and again. If you've got a bike with spoked wheels or a primary chain, you're gonna have to add that to the list, but don't bother with T-CLOCS. If you're even halfway decent at maintaining your motorcycle, it's just a waste of time. Remember, take care of your motorcycle and it will take care of you.